This is Haunted America Radio with your host, Al Shepard. And now, Haunted America Radio.
Hello everyone, Al Shepard here. This is an interview I conducted with Paul Rademacher, who was then the executive director of the Monroe Institute, back in August of 2009.
This is Haunted America with your host, Josh Mantello and Al Shepard on Blog Talk Radio. To discuss today's topics, call 646-716-5896. And now, Haunted America with Josh Mantello and Al Shepard.
We got a few people here in the chat room. Al's with us in the chat room, so he's with us in spirit. He's going to be working on it with us, and hopefully we get our guest in, and he can help us out. And this will be a long show if I'm just standing here talking to myself for 2 hours. One thing I did want to talk about over our first 2 hours here, or the first half hour of our 2 hours here, was something I have coming up over the next few months, a few events I'm going to have planned out as kind of maybe a new business venture, as you could maybe call it, that I'll be running. Right now, I have something coming up I hope everybody would be interested in attending and coming out to up at the Equinox Resort and Hotel in Manchester, Vermont. This is going to be a weekend-long ghost hunting, paranormal investigating, conference-like event. The details are still in the work, but I can tell you this will be something well worthwhile for everybody who's going to want to attend. We're going to have a different array of speakers, workshops, and then you will have a chance at the very end of each night. It's going to be a 2-night event to actually go about and investigate this haunted building on your own, with kind of the skills that you've learned throughout the days. We plan on kind of giving you a ghost hunting 101, how to take ghost pictures, how to capture EVPs, type of lecture throughout the whole weekend. So it should be worthwhile. It should be worthwhile for everybody as they attend. It'll be November 6th and 7th at the haunted Equinox Resort and Hotel in Manchester, Vermont. The place is set to be haunted by none other than the 16th president's family, the Lincoln family. Mary Todd Lincoln and some of their sons are set to be haunting that location. Some people have even thought to have seen Abe himself in that. It was a frequent vacation home to the president and his family during his presidency, and they were actually scheduled to go up there to escape the heat of Washington, D.C. in the summertime and vacation there just a few weeks after Abe got shot. And to this day, supposedly they're still vacationing up there. Anyways, what we have scheduled so far, obviously I'll be speaking. I'll probably be doing your Ghost Hunting 101 lecture and the lecture on paranormal photography, which most of you who have been listening to the show regularly have already heard kind of just over the air.
Hello?
Oh my lord, it's Al. Where'd you come from?
I think Blog Talk has a problem with their switchboard or something tonight, because I had to actually call in on the phone, so...
I think
actually, I've been here the whole time. I just wanted to see you sweat.
Yeah, well, pretty good. I talked out my butt for a while. But anyway, it's a hard thing to do. But anyways, yeah, I had that same problem. I was trying to call in 10 minutes before the show, and every time I would call in, I would get into the host queue, and it would kick me out about 15 seconds later.
Well, I was in here just fine, and everything appeared it was working all right, except obviously nobody was hearing me.
Oh, and I was like, oh, I got 1 minute to go. Where are you? Hello, 30 seconds. Where'd you go? Anyway, this is just kind of blabbing on for about 15 minutes about my upcoming event up at the Equinox Resort and Hotel, which is in kind of your neck of the woods. Probably about an hour away from you. Kind of get the press
Actually,
out
25
for that.
minutes.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful place. 4-diamond hotel and resort, haunted by the Lincoln family themselves. November 6th and 7th. I hope everybody can attend. I'll be speaking. I got Ron Kolick, a past guest of this show of the New England Ghost Project, and his crew are going to be coming up and speaking, and you'll get a chance to investigate with them. I got Joseph A. Citro, who is novelist and nonfiction writer in the ghost paranormal realm. He's written, I think, 6 novels and 7 books about haunted Vermont. Incredible guy. I got him booked up to go, and I just added probably this morning Michael Baker, another past guest of our show. He's going to be doing some workshops on how to capture EVPs and some of the modern-day technologies, and we will screen the film 14 Degrees. And again, every night for 4 hours, you get a chance to wander around all the most haunted locations and rooms in that place to investigate for your own. And all your speakers and guests, some of the best ghost hunters in New England will be on hand to help you out and assist you and give you hints throughout the night.
That sounds like that's going to be awesome fun. I can see that already.
Details will be coming soon. It's still pretty much in the very infant stage. I have a final meeting, sit down with the people up there on, I believe, Thursday. We're going to hash out the details, get some prices up, and we'll next Sunday I'll probably have all the details on how much it's going to cost you, and a lineup and everything along those lines. There'll be package deals you'll be able to get a room and attend the event for a discounted price through the Equinox, or you'll be able to get through me via PayPal Friday, Saturday, or combination ticket at a separate price. Right now I'm looking at probably about $100 to $120 to attend the entire weekend. I'm not too sure where Equinox is going to place the prices for the event and room.
All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly clear.
Well, things got unplugged and everything else around here, I swear. But no, that sounds like a cool event. I'm looking forward to that one. Especially Michael Baker's got some cool tricks up his sleeve. I know he's a real scientific investigator, and
for something like this, I almost might have to tell him to kind of almost dumb it down. Some of his topics are really great for your seasoned people who've been paranormal investigating for a long time. I want this to, anybody listening to know that this isn't an event just for people who hunt ghosts on a regular basis. If you've never hunted a ghost a day in your life, this is something new to you, you just want to go out and maybe experience something, you're more than welcome to attend. This isn't going to be over your head. We're going to teach you how to do what we do, and all you need to bring is a flashlight, maybe a voice recorder, whatever you can fit in your pockets, whatever you want to bring, and you'll be able to wander around and probably get your first ghost hunt under your belt, again, with, some of the top-notch seasoned paranormal investigators throughout New England.
Well, I can't wait till we hear more, even more details on this. Now, what's the date again?
It'll be Friday, November 6th, Saturday, November 7th. There might be some sort of wrap-up thing on the 9th of November, the Sunday. The details, the schedule, and all that is still in the workings. The prices we'll have probably next week, and tickets will most likely be on sale by the end of next week.
All right. Well, the next week's show, you ought to have all kinds of good information.
And I'll have a second event, which will be right around the same time, a lower price at the Houghton Mansion with a nationally known, internationally known UK ghost hunter, TV star. Those details, that's something new that's coming up, and that'll be coming up as we talk too. And it most likely will be a Halloween night type thing. Uh-oh, did I lose you again, Al?
Oh, I got hung up on this time.
That's what kept happening to me earlier. It kept hanging up on me. I definitely think there's some problems in the Blog Talk system. Just on the web page alone, I kept trying to log into the Blog Talk page just to get into our page and look into the chat room, and I kept getting kicked out of that, and about every 10 minutes the chat room tells me somebody else is using my username to sign in. So I think there's definitely a problem on the Blog Talk end. I guess these are the things you get when you use internet radio, unforeseen problems, and who knows where in this world as a server.
Yeah, well, internet's still new technology-wise. There's always new stuff coming out, so, we're the guinea pigs. We'll get the bugs worked out for them, and who knows, maybe we can move forward with our Haunted America TV.
Maybe. There's a few new avenues out there. There's a business call I got to make to somebody anyways, and he actually just launched a paranormal TV webpage. And I know you got your paranormal TV webpage. There's a few of them out there. If we can get on those, who knows, maybe we'll be doing this live over some webcams before we know it.
That's a scary thought considering what we look like. But
I could wear like a Jason mask, it'd be all right.
Yeah, that'd be an improvement. Did you get those MP3s I sent you from last week's show? Were you able to clean them up, hear anything, or?
I did get them. I cleaned them up a little bit. Unfortunately, the later half of my week did turn into a frenzy of business and job interviews and other stuff. So I was going to clip them and try and send them back to you, but I ended up being on my computer almost as if I was in an 8-hour office, doing some planning and phone calls to all these mails. These people had been lining up for this thing up at Equinox. So that got put to the back burner, and I wasn't able to get out the clips to you. But I was able to hear the things that you said you heard. They were there. Hopefully next week, as things calm down for me and the buzz of all this stuff hitting me all at once cools down, and we'll get to them next week. Next week I do have a guest. 99%, penned in. I'm going to be calling him Monday and arranging a few things with him for invest with a client out in his neck of the woods, and he said he'd love to be a guest next week. I just got to give him the final date, time, and number to call in. That'll be the Reverend Steve Wilson. I don't have his bio right here in front of me, but he is a Reverend in the Native American and Shaman arts, psychic, intuitive, Reiki master, incredible guy. For those of you who listen to the show, know that I'm one of the bigger skeptics when it comes to people claiming psychic abilities and stuff along those lines. This is one of the few people I've met in person who, if he tells me there's a spirit next to me, I'll believe him. He's incredible, awesome psychic. He does great stuff. I can't wait to get him on the show and see what he has to say out here. And I have a lot of questions I want to ask him, but I never really get a chance to ask him when we're kind of doing business, investigating stuff. He's working with me on Wednesday night with a client who's having a problem with a spirit in their house, and half his bag of tricks is to have spirit removal. Mine is just documenting. I'm bringing him in. He has an entire crew of psychics and intuitives where they go in and are able to bless houses and do spirit removal. So hopefully it should be a really good show next week.
Good. Send me the info when you get it. I'll get it posted on the page so people can read about it. Also, I've been in touch with John Corkum, who is a paranormal investigator and has a little TV show on the internet, and also has to do with the Monroe Institute. And he's going to be joining us in September. So it'll be kind of a part 2 to today's show. Will be continued in September when he gives us more of the perception of how he uses the Monroe Institute in actually ghost hunting and ghost investigations, things like that. So,
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
I already, during my time alone there, kind of went over a little bit about the Monroe Institute, but you've really been the one in contact with our guest and have really gotten the research about the Monroe Institute. I kind of got through it the best I could. Why don't you, kind of give us the whole lowdown on our guest and the Monroe Institute and what they do?
Well, Paul Rademacher I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I'll find out when he gets here, is the executive director of the Monroe Institute. The Monroe Institute was founded by Robert Monroe back in the 1950s when he was vice president of NBC Radio in charge of shows such as The Shadow and things like that. He founded this institute actually I believe, to start experimenting on helping people learn while they sleep. But in order to do that, the first thing he had to do was teach people how to go to sleep, and on cue, pretty much. So they worked on some audio CDs that could relax people and put them in certain frames of consciousness. And over the last 50 years, that has grown way far away from what they originally started doing. They started finding some very interesting things when you start putting audio in your ears. So I don't want to give it away. I'll let Paul tell us about that here. I got to give him a call here in just a few minutes. Before we get to that, though, I had the chance to interview someone last night on their experiences at the Hoosick Tunnel, which is right down the road from your Houghton Mansion there in North Adams. For those who don't know, it's a 5-mile-long train tunnel with a reputation of being haunted. How much do you know about that, Josh?
Well, quite a bit, because I generally get asked about it a lot because it is our haunted neighbor, and it is probably the most haunted location in the state of Massachusetts. First, let me throw out this disclaimer. It is still a very active train tunnel. By going on its property, you are trespassing and subject to arrest. Please don't go there saying Haunted America Radio or Berkshire Paranormal or anybody involved said it was okay to go there. It is posted as a no trespassing area. They do kind of look away at it during the day, but at night they will get you out of there. It's a 4 3/4-mile tunnel. Nearly 200 people lost their lives building it. For those of you from the Massachusetts area, know what the Big Dig is. This was the Big Dig of the 1800s, costing millions of dollars and greatly over budget. It was the first place nitroglycerin dynamite was ever used, so it was an experimental thing. Hundreds of people lost their lives building this tunnel, and it was an engineering feat. Think of the technology in the 1870s and what they had to try and line it up. They built the tunnel from two ends, and when they met, they were within an inch. The two ends met within an inch of each other, just using lining towers over the mountain. So, in itself, it was an engineering marvel. I've heard great ghost stories from inside there. I've been inside it with the railroad company a few times. Very spooky, scary place.
Very good. Well, I'm going to fire up this little quick interview I did last night with him, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to see if I can get our guest on the phone at the same time here. So here's my little interview.
All right, this is Al. I'm here with a band called the Blue Pages, who, let's see, your name is James?
Yes.
All right, now it's about, what, a month ago or so, you guys came up here and played in Bennington. And after the show, you went down to the Hoosick Tunnel, right? So it was about
Correct.
midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning?
We got there at about 1 a.m.
All right. So you got to tell me what happened when you got there.
So we get up there, and the weird thing is, like, because, you drive down a big hill to get to the Hoosick Tunnel.
Yeah.
And the first thing you notice is, like, you see, like, you don't see any foxes anywhere, like, on the road, anywhere around, like, the city or whatever. But then right when you go down the specific hill, there's, like, tons of foxes just running around like crazy. And they're, so you drive down, and there's, like, you walk on, and right when you get down, there's, like, tons of fireflies also everywhere. Right. But you can see this little the light shuts off, like, right where, like, in 20 feet past that is where the Hoosick Tunnel is. And you can't even see the thing, and you have to walk down the train tracks. So we get off and
now you're on the Florida Mass side, right?
Yeah, the Florida Mass. So we stopped off to get out there, and first like nobody would go with me, so I just started walking by myself, and I was like, screw this is so freaky. So I went back there and got my drummer and our merch guy to come with us. So they came with us, and we started walking up, and all of a sudden, because I read a lot of online blogs about it, and like it's pretty rare for a train to pass by, and like we're all of a sudden like there's no lights or nothing. We just see a light down in the tunnel. And first I was like, what is that? What is that? And finally, you start to hear it, and a train starts coming. So like, I hadn't even got close to the thing yet, but like the train goes by, passes by, which is pretty weird itself. So we start to walk up there. We're walking up there, and it's like it's crazy because like in a lot of Asian cultures, like foxes are the way of the spiritual world. A lot of the times, they're like really mythical creatures, and they're running around everywhere. Like they're running by you and stuff. And there's tons of fireflies. So you start to walk up, and right when all of a sudden the trees start to cover, and you can't see the sun, the moon anymore. Everything stops right there. The light stops. You can't see anything past that. No fireflies past that. They're all sitting there, and then they just stop right there where that light is. And you walk past the light, and all of a sudden, just like all you hear is like the electricity from the tunnel going off. Yeah. And so we start walking up there, and we're like 10 feet away, and like the guys behind me stop, and we're kind of like arguing about like, come on, let's keep going. And we get up there, and all of a sudden the train starts to lights start going off again. As if another train's coming, the lights going off, it's blinking, going ding, 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 super loud. The lights are going off everywhere, and we wait. There's no train coming. There's no train in sight. It's still like we're sitting there. We wait for like a good 15 minutes.
This is like what, 1 o'clock in the morning?
By the time it's like 1:30 a.m. We're sitting there waiting for the train. And it's just, nothing ever comes. So then we're arguing like, all right, screw this, let's turn around. So we turn around to go back, and right when we turn around, we say, all right, we're done with this, we're going back. Exactly right when that happens, the lights, just where the lights were going off, the sound stops. Everything stops right when we start walking back, like in that instance, and there's a guy sitting in the tracks underneath this light. There's one light in the place. It's just down, it's about, I'd say 30 yards down, kind of close to where we parked the car, and there's a guy just standing there staring at us, and we're like, what is going on here? We're kind of freaking out because we're like, I don't know if this is like just some guy who has a gun, who has something like, we're like,
yeah, because that end of the tunnel is kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's an older man, and he's just sitting there. This is it's like between 1:30 and 2 a.m. When this is going on. So it's like, if a man's out here, why is he? And this is what was it, a Thursday night? It was a Thursday night. So it's like, what is a man doing out here at a Thursday night? And we weren't being like loud or anything. We were super quiet. It's just like, and we weren't even. I wasn't even like had a flashlight, so nobody could have seen it. I mean, I had one with me, but I wasn't shining it. And like. And so we're like, what is this man doing out here? And he's just staring at us, and we're stopped, and we're staring at him. So we start to walk towards him, and as we walk towards him, he's still looking at us, but backing up. He doesn't turn to back up and make any signals. He's just hands down by his side, staring at us, moving backwards. And we're just like, holy crap. And like, so I start to move to the right, because I'm trying to get towards the woods, in case like, it's a real person, then I can like run through the woods or something, or like, I don't know, And so like, as I move to the right, he's still moving looking at us, and moving to the opposite side, moving to the left, just moving backwards. And there's an electrical unit right there, those big gray ones, and he just walks behind that and disappears into the woods. And we didn't see like anything after that, and like, so we get back there, and the weirdest part was, our singer and bass player were still in the car, and they had one of the windows was down, and they were staring what the light was. They said they did not see a guy standing there at all. They didn't hear any sound, and the sound was super loud. It's like, and the light is so loud, it's so flashing, it's like you can't miss it. And it's like they didn't hear or see anything, and so we were just like, oh, we gotta get out of here. And so we just like hauled ass out of there.
Welcome to the haunted Hoosick Tunnel.
We actually went back there another time, and it was sort of misty when we got out. Same thing, lots of foxes just by the Hoosick Tunnel, and like lots of fireflies again. They stop at the light, so we get out and start walking again. And right when we get to the black part where the light cuts off again, and like all you can hear is the electrical unit, all of a sudden a storm just flies in right there, and it's like lightning striking everywhere, just like saying, hey, don't come in here. So we're like, especially all the electrical unit and stuff, because you can't, like, once you get to that point, like, you can't hear anything anymore, except for like, it sounds like people are walking around you.
That's a freaky place.
And there's like little rocks, and it seems like eyes are looking at you everywhere, and it's like super freaky. So like right when the lightning started going off, we turned around again. So we haven't even been able to go in. Every time we've gone there, it's like as soon as we get to that point, it's like something happens that says, can't come in here.
It's crazy. Yeah, from what I remember, it's like 128 people died in making that tunnel.
And around a little less than 200 died since then.
It's crazy. So, but all right, I appreciate you telling your story.
I hope I wasn't mumbling too much.
No, not at all.
All right. Well, that was my little interview with James from the band The Blue Pages and their experience at the Hoosick Tunnel. What do you think, Josh?
Oh, that sounds a lot like a lot of the experiences I've heard over the years. One of my favorites is, and they talk about, a guy with a light. Probably the main ghost that people generally hear about or people see in there is the Lantern Man, as they call it, and they think he's an old track walker. They'll be walking through the tunnel, and they'll see a light coming at them as if somebody's carrying like a flashlight or a lantern, and then it just kind of disperses and disappears as it gets close enough to actually see maybe the person.
That's crazy. For those of you who watched the first season of the Ghost Adventures, I believe episode 4 had both the Houghton Mansion and the Hoosick Tunnel on that episode. Well, right now we've got on the phone here our very special guest. We're really glad to have him here, and I know I'm going to screw this up, Paul, so I'm going to have you say your own last name.
Well, you're not very brave for a ghost hunter, are you? I'll tell you.
Well, I've been debating for a week now. Is it Rademacher?
Oh, yeah. No, nobody. Just so you know, nobody ever gets it right, but it's Rademacher.
Rademacher. Okay.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
All right. And you are the author of A Spiritual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, and also the executive director of the Monroe Institute. And I definitely want to talk to you about both things here.
Great.
I didn't get as far into your book as I wanted to. It seems like once I started and got going, the local radio station here called me up and asked me to help them out part-time, and I've been working 60 hours a week for the last 2 weeks.
Oh, my gosh.
I didn't get as far into it as I wanted to, but I did get far enough to get intrigued, I'll tell you that. So,
well, good.
Tell us a little bit about you. I know you started out as a religious with a religious upbringing, and then I believe it was in your early 20s you decided hitchhiking across the country would be a good idea.
Yeah, I did. I was brought up in a family that I wouldn't say they were religious by any means, but my mother was a Presbyterian and my father was a Catholic, and so we kind of went opposite directions on Sunday mornings. So I always sort of was intrigued with my father's Catholic church, but I never could go there to see what was going on, so it was always a great mystery to me. But, my father was an engineer, and I figured that his ideas about religion were pretty conventional, until one day he came to me with this book, and it was T. Lobsang Rampa's The Third Eye, and it was a story of a Tibetan monk and growing up in Tibet and these extraordinary adventures that he was having. And my dad, he says to me, if this book is true, then this is really interesting. And I started reading it, and I was blown away that something like this was even possible, because there weren't many people that were talking about this kind of thing. And so I was even more blown away that my engineer dad would have some kind of use in it. So I was really got intrigued with this whole issue of spirituality and what it might mean for me personally. I think that in my early 20s, I sort of had a philosophy of life where I wanted to grab for all the gusto I could get. I wanted adventures, and I thought the best way to do that would be to have a philosophy that said if something scared me, it probably was a good thing to do. And one of the things that scared me the most was the idea of hitchhiking. And it just so happened about that time that my sister was moving from Arizona out to Tucson, moving from Ohio out to Tucson, Arizona. And so I helped her load up the U-Haul truck, and we drove the 3 days out to Tucson and then unpacked the truck. And then I went out onto the road and just kind of stuck my thumb out, and I decided rather than going straight back to Pennsylvania, I'd go west and up through California down in Yosemite National Park, and then back to Pennsylvania. But one of the things that was most striking to me about that experience was I was somewhere in the middle of the desert, and I got picked up by this trucker who turned out to be one of the original Hells Angels, and he was telling me all kinds of wonderful stories that I was just completely enthralled by, and it seemed like the two of us struck up this friendship that started right away and lasted for about 4 or 5 hours, and then he dropped me off in Big Sur, California. And in Big Sur, I felt this tremendous loneliness come over me as he was driving away, because I really missed him already. But as I was standing there, I also had this tremendous sense of vulnerability, because the sun was setting. And when the sun starts to set in that area of California, it gets cold really quick. And I didn't have any place to stay for the night, and I had no idea what was going to happen. And I realized that I'd gotten what I came for, which was that I was scared. I was really scared. And then in the midst of that, all at once, there was this shift that happened. And the redwoods around me seemed to come to life, and the beams of sunlight that were slanting through the leaves began to take on this ambiance of life, and I felt myself sort of merging with the environment around me. And all of the separations that I normally felt from the world completely disappeared. And I went into this mystical experience where it seemed as if the earth was actually embracing me. And I felt at that point in my life more safe than I've ever felt at any other time. And that was the irony of it. Here I was in the most vulnerable of positions, having no idea what was going to happen to me, and yet I felt this complete safety. And so for me, it was one of the first times that I began to realize that there's a whole lot more to this world and this environment than we ordinarily allow ourselves to see.
All right. Now I know there was a car accident or something you had not too long after that as well, right?
Right. Yeah, I did. And that was, which is probably the second part of the story, because here I was feeling this tremendous sense of safety at this point. And a little while later, this young woman came along and picked me up in her car. And we were driving along Highway 1, which, if you've ever been on Highway 1, it weaves in and out of the coastline. And to the right, if you're heading north, the mountains just go seemingly straight up into the sky. And off to the left, it's a sheer drop-off into the Pacific Ocean. We were coming around a bend in the road, and the sun was setting right at the horizon, and it blinded us as we were coming around that turn. And then right at that point in the road, there was this huge boulder. And we hit the boulder, and the car rolled over 3 times. And it was one of those moments where I was sure, absolutely sure, that we were going to go over the edge and that we were going to die. There was just no question about it. But for some reason, the car rolled straight down the road 3 times. I didn't have a seatbelt on. I just put my hand against the roof, and we ended up upside down. And I looked over at her, and I asked her if she was okay, and she asked me if I was okay. We were both all right. We got out of the car, and then right across the road, a scenic overlook, there was this guy in one of those motor homes, and he took us in, and he dropped us off in San Jose, and then he took me on up to San Francisco. We went down to Yosemite National Park, and then he drove me all the way back to Minnesota in one ride. And not only that, but the guy was a gourmet cook, and he would put me in front in the steering wheel, and he'd have me drive while he'd be cooking things in the back. And it was just one of those incredible confirmations that I indeed was in absolutely great hands.
I mean, it just seems like everything fell into place for you just when you needed it. I mean, you'd have a bad experience immediately followed by a good one or something.
Yeah, that seems to be the way it was, and
yeah,
and again, it was just a real big learning for me that this sense of spirituality that is so important and permeates the world. It's available to an ordinary guy like me, and I think it's probably available to anyone as well.
Okay, now, how long was it after that when you got back to Pennsylvania, when you started your concrete business?
Well, let's see. It was probably about 6 years later that my brother and I had started a construction business, and we were building a home one day, and I was up working on the roof of the home, and I was pulling on a board, and all of a sudden the board gave way. And I found myself just careening off into space and had absolutely no time whatsoever to adjust to the fall. Ended up landing on a pile of gravel, and we had a crane there that was helping us out, and I missed the base of the crane with my head by about 6 inches. Didn't know it at the time, but I ended up fracturing my left hip. They took me to the hospital, and they did some x-rays of the hip, and the doctor didn't see any fracture, and so they put me in physical therapy. But, by the way, if you have a fractured hip, that's probably not the best place to be. And I was in excruciating pain. And after a while, the doctor came by, and he looked at me, and he said, you don't look like you're doing too well. And I said, well, I'm really not. And he said, well, let's take another look at that hip. And they'd found a fracture at that point, so they took me out of physical therapy and put me into traction. And when the doctor told me about the fracture and he said that I'd be off work for weeks, I went into this spiral of pain and anxiety. Pain because the hip was truly agonizing, and anxiety because this was the busiest time of our year, and there was absolutely no way that I could be off work. I didn't think there was any way my brother could handle the business without my help. And as I felt myself going down in this spiral, all of a sudden I broke through into another reality. And in that other reality, the pain vanished completely. The anxiety completely disappeared. I found myself surrounded by complete, total peace. And as the Apostle Paul says, it was the peace that passes all understanding. And for me, those weren't just abstract words. It was a reality. And so here I was surrounded in this pristine environment. And at one point, I found myself standing in front of a being of light. And we were conversing about my life, but we were not using words. And it was such a stunning thing for me because, I might have heard of other people going through this kind of thing, but, when it happens to you personally, it changes everything when you have that kind of experience. And my wife and I had been wrestling with a question prior to that experience. I had a sense of calling into the ministry, and we were looking for the sign that was unmistakable. And when I entered into that other reality, that other dimension, I really saw it as sort of the ultimate sign from God. This was God's voice. And so I took my wife and 2 children at that time, and we went off to Princeton Theological Seminary, and I graduated 3 years later with a Master of Divinity degree, and then started 15 years as a pastor in the Presbyterian Church. The problem was, though, I began to realize over time that experience of falling off the roof was so much more than just to answer that question. What it really did was it created a hunger in me to want to get back to that world again, to experience it, to contact it more consistently, to understand it more profoundly. And so even though I was in the ministry and I thought maybe I might be able to do that within the church, it turned out that my time was taken up in so many other directions that this one thing that was so important to me was the last thing I could get to. And so it created a tremendous tension for me as I was in the ministry, because my mind and my heart were sort of pulling in an entirely different direction from what was happening in the church. And so it was a long, hard struggle for me, to be sure.
Now, my first question is now, did the pain when you're in the hospital, did that put you in a trance-like mode, or how did you find yourself experiencing this alternate reality? Did it just come on you all at once, or how did that occur?
Well, I really wish I had a better answer for that question, because one of the things that you run into when you start to talk about these kinds of experiences is the simple fact that our language is not adequate to capture it. All of our language is tied to the physical world, physical objects, our personal experience in the past. But when you move into an alternate dimension like that, the words simply don't hold up anymore. All you can do is use metaphors. And things like time is dramatically altered as well. So it felt to me, as I reflect on it now, as if I actually sort of broke through into
Okay, Josh, are you right there?
I am right here. I'm just been listening to this whole story.
Okay, well, the last bit that he just spoke, he was breaking up really bad on my end, so I'm trying to see if it's me or him. Are you hearing him fine?
No, yeah, I was getting the same thing. I was thinking the same. I thought maybe my cell phone was dropping out on me, but no. I couldn't really understand that last 45 seconds there, but I kind of got, the most of it there. He's pretty much saying, at one point, he kind of, I think I heard him say, it broke through like a veil and, had a kind of like an enlightened experience out of it.
Right. Should I call you guys back, or do you want to call me back?
You're breaking up for some reason, and I'm not sure if it's you or Blog Talk, but yeah, if you want to hang up and call right back, we'll bring you right back in here and see if we get a better connection.
All right, call you right back. Thanks.
Okay. All right, I was beginning to think it was me here, and I'm trying to shut down some things on the computer, and I typed in the chat room asking you if you were hearing it the same way I was, and you weren't answering me, so I thought it was me.
I got a lot of noise in the house, so I've kind of stepped outside and for it to be a little bit quieter. That's what I was thinking. It was maybe my phone because I had moved, so I was maybe I'm in like a weird spot. But no, I mean, very interesting story. I'd love to see where this is going. You can tell this is a guy who's very kind of I want to say at peace with himself. Very intelligent. Fascinating story. I mean, that's the type of stuff. I love the idea that he brought forward, saying that to really take yourself up, bring yourself forward, you got to face your fears, and that whole hitchhiking story of to move on in life, he did something to face his fears, and that was one of his fears. That's a great kind of metaphor for anybody in life. Take your fears and take any of your fears and push to them and move forward through them instead of just spending your life kind of in the corner and hiding from them. I don't know if that's kind of the way I interpreted it and the way I took it from my own personal side. I don't know kind of how you thought of it.
Okay, Paul, are you back with us?
Yes, can you hear me okay now?
You sound perfect now.
Oh, good. That's great.
Yeah, I don't know what was wrong with the other connection there, but it was crazy. Anyways, why don't you repeat the last minute of what you said there about how I got the part where you said words can't really describe it, but
right.
I was just kind of wondering if you were asleep and had this experience, or wide awake, or how it occurred.
I think as I've been in this work for a lot of years, so much of this happens actually in the in-between state between being asleep and awake. Can you hear me okay, Alan?
As you started talking, it's starting to crackle just a little bit, but nothing like it was before.
Okay, all right.
I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
Well, will you keep me posted if I need to call you back?
I sure will, definitely.
All right. Okay. So what I was saying is that so much of this work, I think, happens in that in-between state, sort of that range. If you've ever woken up in the morning and you're just not quite all the way awake, and you're feeling extremely relaxed and you're sort of dreamy, I think that is the range where so much of this opens up to these other worlds. Because when you're in the sleep state, then you lose consciousness of the physical world, and when you're fully awake, then it seems that you lose contact with the non-physical world. And so I think it's that hypnagogic state that we call that is the doorway to so much of this.
Yeah, I agree. When you're wide awake, there's too many other things distracting you. That's something we've talked about when we're discussing ghost investigations, how hauntings are still there during the day. You just don't pay attention to them as much because you got too many other things going on, I think.
Exactly.
And that's why nighttime seems to be the best time, because other things have settled down and it's quieter, and you notice things that you normally wouldn't notice during the day. Okay, so you went on and became a minister for 15 years.
Right.
and I've always had the opinion where I don't need to go to church, or I don't need a middleman to talk to God. I can sit right here in my living room and talk to him just fine. And that church is more of a social thing, club type of thing. To me, just where like-minded people can get together and share a common interest. And I often wonder how much of what we read in the Bible is truth, how much of it is fiction or personal opinion and things like that. So I understand as time went on, you were finding some things that didn't quite line up either, if I'm interpreting this right. If you want to explain a little bit about that. Okay, now you're breaking up completely, and we can't even hear you. All right, I think you said you called back. I'm not sure. I can't tell.
Pretty much what I made out of it too there, Al. This year is our show of technical difficulties, I think.
Oh, I'm telling you, I don't know what it is, if there's power somewhere that says this show is not supposed to go on or what, because maybe we're going to reveal a truth that isn't supposed to be revealed or something.
I don't know, it's a secret government plot against us and our listeners.
You don't see any black helicopters flying over your house, do you?
I don't know, but I'm right below the hospital. A life flight, I'm sure, is going to fly by any time now. I had one of those in a few days.
Yeah, I've been in them myself 3 times in the last couple of years. That's enough. Okay, Paul, let's try this again.
All right. Well, if the past experience is indicated, we've got about 30 seconds to talk. Is that about right?
That's about it. But you're still a little crackly. I don't understand what. Are you on a home phone or a cell phone or?
I'm on a home phone.
That's weird. Josh and I were just saying that maybe there's some government conspiracy here that you're going to reveal some truth that isn't supposed to get out or something.
Hey, well, let me. How about if I try calling you on a cell phone? Should I try that and see if that works any better?
Hey, we're willing to try anything.
Okay, I'll call you right back.
All right. I mean, I'm absolutely, this is a great conversation. This is with a few shows where I just sit back the whole time here and almost just listen and take it all in. I feel more like a listener. I feel more like a listener today than I do a host, just because I'm learning more just listening today than anything else.
I feel so bad making him have to keep calling in like this. I mean, geez, but I don't know what else to do.
If it does it on a cell phone, I would be feeling a bet, a dollar for dollar here that it's something on the Blog Talk switchboard, just like everything else that's been going wrong with us today.
All right, Paul, let's see how you sound now.
Okay, how's that? Is it any better?
Right at this moment, you're 100% clear.
Okay, all right. Well, we're making progress then. That's good.
I never thought I'd see the day where a cell phone worked better than a home phone. Something doesn't make sense there.
I know. All this psychic energy going around. That's what it is.
I've heard of that happening. I've seen it happen in rooms with clairvoyants and psychics and anything along those lines. Electronic equipment, things that are grounded, sometimes have a hard time functioning properly.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely, we've seen that sometimes at the Institute too. Yeah.
Okay, so you were saying you were starting to say how the church and your personal experiences weren't quite lining up or something.
Yeah, for me, in the church they always talk about this idea of eternity. That the big question is what's going to happen to you after you die. Are you going to go to heaven or are you going to go to hell? And the criteria for that varies depending on what tradition you're a part of. You know, it could be a matter of speaking the right words, or it could be a matter of being a part of the right denomination, or being a generally nice person, or, you know, take your pick. But what I began to think about is that there's this other thing that I call infinity that is quite different from that. And I think that that's really more what Jesus was talking about, because he would talk about the kingdom of heaven as being something that was present now, not something that you waited for until you died. He would say the kingdom of heaven is at hand, or the kingdom of heaven is within you, or it's among you. And he would even say some of you won't taste death before you'll see the kingdom come in all this glory. And so I think that there was this real sense that he was talking about something different from what most people understand in that regard. And I think, you know, when I fell off of the roof and entered into that other dimension, it really struck home to me that there is so much more that's available to us that we are simply overlooking, because nobody tells us about these things, and nobody, or very few, tell us about it. Or if they do tell us about it, they say that it's only for people who have practiced for a long time, and or saints and shamans and gurus and that kind of thing. But, you know, I think it's available to just about everyone if they're willing to take a look at it. And I think that's what's really exciting, because that tells me that the human potential is far greater than what we are giving ourselves credit for. I think that there's a birthright that we have inherited that allows us to communicate far beyond the physical world, and also within the physical world in an entirely different way. And of course, you guys know all about that too.
Well, we wish we knew. We're that's what we've often said, that this science of ghost investigations and things like this is such a great science, because there are no answers, and the average Joe Schmo has just as much chance of stumbling across that magic answer as someone with $100,000 worth of equipment. Right. And that's what's so great, is anyone can catch that EVP or that video footage or that photograph, and so anyone can get in on this. So let me ask you, coming from both sides of the coin, having been a minister and also experiencing the spirituality for yourself, I've often wondered, is hell a real place, or is hell something that was made up by the church to scare people into following church doctrine?
Well, you know, I think you're going to get as many answers on that as people that you will question, and I don't pretend to have the answer on that. My suspicion is that we kind of create our own hells as we go through life, and we can also carry that on the other side of death too, so that our whatever expectation we have is probably going to be realized, because when you move out of the physical world into the metaphysical or the non-physical world, the thoughts that we have are much more powerful in creating the environment that we find ourselves in. So if there's an expectation that a person is going to go to hell, they're probably going to craft something like that unknowingly and experience that for a while. But I think after a while, eventually they'll get tired of that and move on to other things to work with. And so, you know, and there may be people who believe in hell and are convinced they're not going to hell, but they want to see it on their way to wherever they're going, and so they will, you know, they will notice that. And so, you know, so people before they die can also move into these realms and find whatever their expectations are as well. So it's not a simple answer by any means, but I think that if you want to be one, you know, you can find that. But my experience of the afterlife it's much different from that. It's more like what happened to me when I fell off the roof. You know, that there is this incredible sense of love and support and guidance that comes to you when you pass over from this physical world to the non-physical.
Yeah, I realize there's no easy answers for any of these questions that we're asking, but I don't think we're looking for definitive answers. We're looking for opinions, and that's about all we're going to get in this lifetime.
Right.
I know. Go ahead, Josh.
It's something we kind of always say every week, and you'll never really know until it's your time to know, until it's your time to pass and it's your time to move on. It's a question you're never going to really be able to answer in your true living lifetime.
Well, that's maybe yes and maybe no. At the Monroe Institute, we do lots of exercises where people actually do have moved from the physical world into the non-physical world and can have bring back experiential information and data that help to sort of provide some kind of a picture that is different from speculation or opinion. It's something that's really based more on experience. And I didn't really want to jump right into this aspect of it, but we do have a program there where which is called Lifeline, where we help people to move into ranges of experience that move beyond the physical, and people can begin to encounter deceased loved ones or even people that they don't know, or begin to encounter aspects of themselves that maybe have been split off, and help these aspects to move then into further on down into the journey on the other side of death. But there is a range of experience that we call the belief system territories. And this is a territory where every human belief that is in existence resides. And so that's why I say, if you believe in hell, you're probably going to find it in that area. If you believe in some fashion of heaven, you're probably going to find it in that area. If you believe that you're going to be going to church for the rest of your life, you'll find that there as well. So I think that it is possible for us to begin to experience these things beyond just speculation.
Now, Josh and I, we come from two different backgrounds. He's the paranormal investigator, and he goes out to document spirits and ghosts and things that haunt buildings. And I've always gone down the path of more just wanting to communicate with those who have already passed over that can tell me what it's like in heaven. And that's like Dr. Meeks and his Spiricom machine, and Sarah Estep in her Voices of Eternity book, and things like that. And that's what led me down the path to stumbling on the Monroe Institute. So from what I've been hearing, it seems like your experiences have somewhat paralleled those of Bob Monroe.
Well, there are some commonalities, and I wouldn't want to say for a minute that they were exactly the same, but
no.
His investigation of this whole realm started when he was having spontaneous out-of-body experiences back in the 1950s. And for instance, one evening he was lying in bed, and the next thing he knew, he was lying against this flat, hard surface, and he thought, well, what happened? Did I fall out of bed or what? And he looked around, and he saw that there was this fountain coming up out of the floor. At least it looked like a fountain. And then he kind of got himself turned around and suddenly realized that the flat, hard thing that he was lying against was actually the ceiling, and he was floating against the ceiling. And the fountain that looked like it was coming out of it was actually the chandelier in the room that was hanging down from the ceiling. And he looked down, and he saw his wife in bed, and then some other guy that was in bed with his wife. And suddenly he realized that the guy that was in bed with his wife was himself. And you can imagine the shock that he experienced at that point, because he'd never had anything like this happen before. And so he swam down through the air and got back into his body and sat up, and his heart was pounding. Thought he was dying, and then he thought he was crazy, and he went and had physical examinations and psychological examinations, and everything checked out. And so after a while, he kind of got curious about this whole thing. So he was a radio man, and he actually at one point in his career was vice president of Mutual Broadcasting System He was also a radio producer and had produced countless radio programs. One of the most famous was The Shadow. And so he decided to see if there was some way he could use sound to help to control these spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And so he got very curious about that, did a lot of experimentation. And over time, he began to realize that this movement out of body was just one small slice of a very large pie that is the human condition of awareness and consciousness. And so what we do at the Institute is we use sound to help people to move into non-ordinary states of awareness, altered states of awareness, so that they can begin to experience for themselves what it's like to begin to investigate realms of awareness that are ordinarily reserved for unconsciousness or sleep, or for the mystics or the sages and the gurus and that kind of thing. We find that we can help people move into these states in a very short period of time compared to standard meditation practices. And so,
okay, now
go ahead.
Now I know you did. You were part of a DVD that's out there, the Path series. I believe the
right.
DVD was The Afterlife.
That's right.
And I got a little clip from that, so this might be a good time for me to throw this in here, seeing it seems like that's just about where we're at here. So let me
go ahead.
Let me just fire this up for a second.
All right. There are so many other dimensions that are in operation at this very time. And again, you don't have to get very esoteric to think about these things. Think about radio waves or television waves. We can sit here and I could tune into a radio station, and maybe it's a news station. There's some guy somewhere who is broadcasting news. I can change the dial and it'll be a country music station. There's somebody somewhere who's playing country music. I can change it again and I can get pop music. I don't see those other dimensions, but when I tune into them, when I direct my perception, then those worlds become real. They come to life. Where are they? They're everywhere. They're being broadcast everywhere. The same with television. You can tune in from one channel to the other, and you can enter into entirely different worlds that have emotion behind them, or joy, or desperation, and you can get so engrossed in that that you forget about this life. Those are all happening right here, right now, simultaneously. So for me, it's not very much of a stretch of imagination to think that it isn't limited to radio and TV, that there are other worlds that are happening simultaneously right here. So then it becomes a question of how do we tune into that? How do we shift our perceptions so that we can begin to interact with them in a meaningful way?
All right, and that's the ultimate question that paranormal investigators are trying to figure out, is how to tune in to that other realm where these ghosts are. And that's kind of what led me to the Monroe Institute. Doing the show with Josh, the first thought I had was, can Monroe's products help ghost investigators become better investigators? Could HemiSync, which is Monroe's product, audio CDs, become a tool in the toolbox of a ghost investigation team? What do you think?
Well, I think they definitely can. It's of course there are several levels of engagement of this. One is to buy the CDs, and you'll get some results with that. It varies from person to person, but we find that the HemiSync technology is one aspect of many others that we begin to incorporate into our residential programs. And it's at the residential programs is where people really can get a sense of this. It's very common for people who go through our programs to encounter loved ones who have died. And even if they're not expecting that, it seems to happen quite often. And I know from my own personal experience that happened to me as well. And It wasn't anything I was expecting in any way, shape, or form, but in my very first program, I ended up, maybe I'll just tell you a story on this because it'll make more sense if I do it that way.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably need to back up here and get to how you went from becoming a minister to becoming the executive director of Monroe here, so we don't get ahead of ourselves.
It's kind of a big jump, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So I was in the ministry, and a couple of years into the ministry, my wife and I were up in Toronto, Canada, and there is a bookstore called the world's biggest bookstore, and it's still there. And this is back before Barnes & Noble and Borders and all those mega bookstores. And so at the time, it really was the world's biggest bookstore. And so you walked in there, and just thousands and thousands of books. And I was there for about 2 minutes when one book just kind of jumped off the shelf at me, and it was Robert Monroe's second book called Far Journeys. And I read that thing cover to cover because here for the first time was someone who was talking about this experience I had when I fell off the roof. And he wasn't doing it from a perspective of religion or philosophy or speculation or theology. He was just talking about his own personal experience, and that really spoke to me. So I read the thing cover to cover, and I got to the back end of the book, and I found out that there was a place called the Monroe Institute where you could actually go to study this kind of thing and experience it. And as soon as I read it, I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing to go to a place like that? And then right after that was the second thought that said, wouldn't it be amazing to work at a place like that? And of course, I knew neither one was ever going to happen because I was in the ministry, didn't have much discretionary income. But about 10 years after that point, a friend of mine actually paid my way to go. And I went to the Monroe Institute as a participant for the first time. And when I went through that process, the world that I experienced when I fell off the roof opened up in spades. I mean, it was just like living Technicolor, so far beyond anything that I could possibly imagine that I was blown away. Tried to come home and tell my wife about it, but there simply weren't words, and all I could do was just weep because of tears of gratitude, because this was something I had wanted so very much. Well, I went through a few more programs, and then in the year 2000, I felt this this tension I was having between what I really wanted to do and what I was doing in the ministry got so great that I left the ministry, walked out of the door of the church, and then 2 months later, I got a call from the Institute asking me if I wanted to become a residential trainer there. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that voice that said to me, wouldn't it be amazing to go there and it wouldn't be amazing to work there, was actually kind of foretelling the future. And
Can
so
you
here
say law of attraction?
Maybe so, yeah, something like that. Call it what you will. And so for about 6 years, I was a residential facilitator there. And then in December of 2006, Lori Monroe, who had been the executive director, passed away, and the board started looking for a new executive director. And so I've been in this position since October of 2007.
All right. So that's how you got there, which was almost like like I said, the law of attraction. If you dream it, if you visualize it, it will happen. And you wanted it bad enough, it came to you, which I just had the same thing happen to me here just this last 2 weeks ago. There was a position a job that I was looking at that I wanted, and all of a sudden, right out of the blue, the person that had that job got fired, and they called me up, and here I am. So I know all about this if you want something bad enough. So, okay, now you're at Monroe. I know from watching Bob Monroe's videos that are, I believe, on the internet, YouTube, or someplace I saw them,
right.
How the Monroe started out as trying to find out how to teach people to learn as they sleep.
That was actually where he started experimenting with sound. One of the big issues was how do you get people to sleep, because they didn't want to use drugs to get people to sleep, but they needed to get them to sleep so that they could do their experimentation. So he started experimenting with various sound patterns to induce this sleep And as you can imagine, Bob Monroe was his own test subject very often. And I'm not really clear whether it was because of what he was doing with the sleep studies or it just was for other reasons. It was during that time that he started having his spontaneous out-of-body experiences. I think it was about 1958.
Okay. What I would think, just me personally, is as you're going through this process of trial and elimination, trial and error, of trying different frequency sounds, you're bound to find out that certain frequencies are going to cause certain reactions. So it seems to me that's probably where he started down one path and wound up going down so many others. I know it was respected enough where the government came and wanted help with their remote viewing programs in the 70s,
Correct.
and I believe that's where Skip Atwater came into the picture.
Yeah, Skip Atwater was in the Army, and he got very interested in this idea of remote viewing because he began to realize that the Russians apparently had some kind of a remote viewing program, and so he approached his superiors with the idea of seeing if they couldn't duplicate that remote viewing to see if they could assess what the Russians were capable of. And so he was the person in charge of the remote viewing program that eventually became known as Stargate. And he was the one who recruited and trained the various remote viewers down through the years. One of the first remote viewers was, actually the first, was a fellow by the name of Joe McMoneagle. And Joe is probably one of the world's foremost remote viewers at this point in time. Well, Skip approached Bob Monroe to see if there was some way that this hemisync technology could be used to help Joe McMoneagle in his remote viewing practice. And so I think they scheduled about 10 weeks, not in succession, but over a period of time where Joe McMoneagle would come to the Institute. Robert Monroe created a special tape for him to use in his experience. What they found out was that it didn't really enhance the remote viewing capacity that much, but what it did do was to dramatically reduce what Joe calls his cool down period. That's the time, the preparation period that it took him to go before he could go and do remote viewing. And prior to coming to the Institute, I think it was about 2 hours. And then with the help of the technology, that eventually came down to about 10 minutes. And now he can do it almost instantaneously. That program ended, and that really was the end of the Monroe Institute's involvement with the military at that point. However, after Skip Atwater retired, he came and worked as the research director at the Institute for about 20 years, and he's now the president of the Institute, but we don't have any existing military connections at this point.
Yeah, and I'll just tell people that remote viewing is basically the government's fancy words for clairvoyance. And sure, I had a question here, and I was going to say.
Well, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
For a minute, I've heard a lot and read a lot about remote viewing. It's a fascinating subject for anybody who ever wants to really look into it. We don't really have the time now to get into it, but basically, you get into that meditative state, and you have it's kind of an OBE, out of body experience, where you view something that is far away from you. And the government was using it. Basically, they would have a room full of their remote viewers, and they would have a target, and this target, say, being a Soviet missile site. A lot of this was used during the Cold War, and they would, remotely view, have an out-of-body experience, and envision in their meditative state, where this site was. When they would awaken, they would map it out and actually, try and locate these places just by out-of-body experiences and remotely, viewing something completely on the other side of the world from their location here in the United States.
Yeah, there actually are a couple of methods. The out-of-body experience is one of them. The other one is what they specifically call remote viewing, where it's not an out-of-body experience. It's more like a visionary experience, I guess you could say. there are advantages and disadvantages to both of those approaches. And Joe McMoneagle, for instance, found over time that the out-of-body experience was kind of cumbersome because it took a long time to generate. And also, if you go and you do an out-of-body experience, you get the information, you come back and it's not quite the right information, then you got to start all over again to do the out-of-body experience to try to make that happen. But he found over time that the remote viewing was a much easier way for him to get the information that they needed.
Right, and I don't know, I might be taking us completely off subject, but I was kind of getting into stuff where I'm really getting interested. And I know, a lot of the things I've heard and talked about with OBEs was you always kind of have a tether. Is that something, the tether breaks, there's circumstances to it? Do you have that experience, or is that something that you could say you have or have not experienced or had people talk about at the Monroe?
It's an interesting question because I know that in the classic literature there is a lot of talk about the silver cord and being tethered to the body. And quite honestly, in all the years that I was a facilitator there, and hundreds and hundreds of people had come through the program, I can't even think of one person who mentioned that silver cord or that tether. We found over time that there's a much stronger tether than that, and that's your bladder, because eventually your bladder is going to fill up, and it's going to call you back no matter what. So we never worry about it losing anybody because of that.
All right, and I had one other question that kind of struck me in my as we were talking earlier, and before we kind of continue on with where Al wants to go. You talk about how using music and sounds to help relax the body, to help people get into the state of mind where they can have the OBEs and get into that enlightened state. Would you kind of compare that to almost hypnosis, a more serious side of hypnosis, where with hypnosis, a true doctor at that practice, relaxes the body, gets the mind down, almost to a sleep state, an awakened sleep state. Would you kind of compare the two?
I think there are similarities for sure. My understanding, though, is that if you actually did brain mapping of somebody who's going through hypnotherapy or hypnosis and somebody who's using the hemisync, the brain patterns would look somewhat different between them. I don't know what the implications of that are, and I'm not sure if maybe you're just getting to the same state but using different methodologies. But that's the one thing I do know, that it does appear that there are different brain patterns that begin to emerge.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, because they almost, and I see what you're saying here. Because I know hypnosis is kind of an awakened sleep. But I think that with hypnosis is maybe geared more towards implanting suggestion into the brain, where I think maybe what you're doing at the Monroe is more of opening the brain up, not to suggestion, but to what's around it.
Yeah, I think I don't know that I don't want to say anything disparaging in any way about hypnosis, because I really don't know enough about it, or except what I just said. But I do think that what we really strive to at the Institute is to make sure everybody understands that they are in control of the process, and that we teach them people to trust their own intuition and to really listen to their own guidance. And so that's paramount for us, and because one of the things we really believe in is that we tell people is that we don't have any dogma, and except for the possibility that you might be more than the physical body. And we don't ever try to tell people what that more might be. We want them to go out and to find out for themselves and then come back and tell us. And so we don't have any saints or gurus who have the answers at the Institute. What we are trying to do is to empower people to find their own answers, and I think that's really key, and I think that's where this process has a lot of integrity.
All right.
Now, I'm not real familiar with the people that were in the remote viewing program, if they were already recognized with psychic ability or just soldiers, but at the Monroe Institute, I've had a lot of psychics tell me that everyone has psychic abilities and everyone has the potential. Do you find that at the Monroe that anyone can come in and have some type of experience?
No, we don't have a 100% track record by any means, and I wouldn't want to give the impression that we do. But the percentage of people who actually do have some kind of life-changing experience or some kind of encounter or perception that goes beyond their expectations is very, very high. Normally we have a group of about 24 people, maximum of 24 people in a group, and out of those, maybe one or two might be disappointed with what they've experienced, and the rest of them, for the vast majority of them, are really astounded at what they've experienced. We also find that if a person doesn't have something that happens to them while they're at the Institute, sometimes when they go home, things can start to unfold for them in unexpected ways. So there's a process that kind of gets initiated through our classes that really kind of takes some time to unfold. And we used to tell people, don't come back for a second class until at least 6 months, because we feel like it takes that long to integrate and to begin to understand so much of what happens there.
So how long are these programs at the Institute, and what do they consist of?
Well, our residential programs start on Saturday evening and finish up on the following Friday morning. And what they consist of is sort of a rhythm of we have these what we call check units. That's short for Controlled Holistic Environmental Chamber. And what it amounts to is it's a bed with 4 walls and a ceiling, and you climb through an opening and you sleep there at night, and then you also lie there to listen to the exercises on the headphones. So you get up in the morning, you have breakfast, and then we talk about the first exercise, and we send people back to their units, listen to them, and then we come down, and if you want to, you can talk about your experience in the group. We find that rhythm between the individual experience and then reflecting on it within the context of the group is a very, very important process to go through. So what we do is we take people to different destination points in the human perception. These different destination points are what we call focus levels. And the first one is called Focus 10, which is simply mind awake, body asleep. Ordinarily, when we get deeply relaxed and our body starts to feel that, we cross over this threshold that dumps us into sleep, and we lose consciousness of the physical world. But in Focus 10, what we help people to do is get deeply relaxed and then cross over that threshold and retain their consciousness so that they can begin to experience worlds that are normally reserved for sleep or dreams and whatnot. That's Focus 10. Focus 12 is the state of expanded awareness. Focus 15 is the state beyond time. And Focus 21 is the bridge state between physical world and non-physical reality. So we cover that within that first week.
And where would you put it? Are these all considered sort of out-of-body experiences, or
not at all?
The classic OBE occur at a certain focus level, or?
No. Again, these focus levels allow you to experience different forms and ranges of consciousness. Remember, I said before that the out-of-body experience is just one small slice of a very large pie of human awareness. So these different focus levels can help people to move into this larger pie of human awareness, human consciousness. Some people, about 15% of them, may have an out-of-body experience while they're at the Institute. Others experience different other kinds of awarenesses or perceptions, and those can be so profound. As for example, I came after reading Bob Monroe's books, of course, I wanted to go there and have an out-of-body experience. But I didn't have a classic out-of-body experience in the way that he did, where I went out and looked back and I saw my body lying in the bed. But so much else happened to me that it really didn't matter to me at all. It was, for me, an understanding that there are many, many different ways that we can begin to perceive these other dimensions and other realities.
So it's basically like visually seeing pictures of things and hearing voices or things like that.
It depends on the person. You can have people who are strong visually, and they will tend to have visual experiences. You can have people who are strong in terms of hearing, and they'll have auditory experiences. Some people have kinesthetic experiences. Others actually will have smell or taste. But then some people will get into what's called synesthesia, where you begin to have a crossover of senses. Other people will have profound intuitions and knowings. And so there's so much that can happen, but each person brings their own experience and their own peculiarity to it, and that's going to shape the way that experience begins to take form for them.
Well, this sounds like classic psychics. Some are clairaudient, some are clairvoyant, some are clairsentient. So it almost sounds like whatever ability you're more, I don't know, destined to have is what's going to be increased. It sounds like. Now, when they're in the chambers, you said they're listening to these audio things on headset. Are those the same audio files that are available for the home study things that you
to some extent
offer?
To some extent they are, but we also introduced a number of other ones in the residential program that are not available for public sale. And so you'll get some crossover, but it's not 100% by any means.
Okay, I know looking through the website and things that you have about 70 different CDs available, I think, that all are supposed to help accomplish certain things. I guess there's some that'll help put you to sleep, and some that'll keep you awake, and some that'll help you journey out of the body and things like that. And it's all based on putting different frequencies into your head and awaking certain different parts of the brain, I believe, if I'm interpreting it right.
Well, the way the technology works is that we, and this is just a very quick and dirty explanation here because it's much more complex than what I'm going to tell you, but basically we'll put one audio signal into one ear and a different audio signal in the other ear. It might be just a little bit off in terms of their tone. And if you've ever listened to two sounds like that, when they come together, you get kind of a wavering or a vibrato that is a third tone and a third frequency. What the brain then begins to do is it starts to mimic, to some extent, that third frequency. And when you do that, then you're starting to move the brain into frequency ranges that can move you into alpha states, theta states, and delta states. And the problem that you run into is that the frequencies in those lower brain states, lower frequency states, are below the threshold of hearing. And that's why we have to take two audible sounds to produce that third signal that gets into the frequency ranges that we're trying to achieve. In fact, there's a mixture of signals on these. Some of it is to take you down into these deeper states, but some of the frequencies are, say, in the beta range, which is the normal adult waking consciousness. And so the beta frequencies are there to keep your mind alert and awake as you are moving down into these ranges of the meditative states, dream states, lucid dreaming, that kind of thing.
Okay, so getting back to the ghost investigating part here, my first thought when I seen this was if investigators could could take these home CDs and by using them on a regular basis, maybe enhance some of their psychic abilities or awareness when they're walking around through a house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and maybe be aware of more of what's going on around them.
Right.
Yeah, I had a question on the tip of my tongue now. I just lost it. But that was my thought, is if anyone can use these to enhance their psychic abilities, basically, getting back to the question or what the statement that the psychic said, that everyone has psychic abilities, and with proper training, anyone can become a psychic. Do you believe that?
Well, I think we all have psychic abilities. I think that some have more abilities than others, and some. I think part of it is sort of learning what your psychic language is to some extent. You know, we talked before about people receiving information in different ways. It's one of the most difficult things that we encounter at the Institute, is to get people to let go of the way that they think they should be receiving information, so that they can embrace the way in which they actually are receiving the information. And because everybody wants to, you know, if they read Bob Monroe's books, then everybody wants to do it just the way that Bob Monroe did it, and if it isn't like that, well, then nothing else makes sense, or it's not appropriate, or it's not real. But the key, I think, is to really learn who you are, and learn to trust that, and know that the person that you are is just as you should be, and you have the tools that you need to do that. And the HemiSync process, I think, helps people to begin to do that. As long as they're willing to tune into all of their perceptual senses, even beyond the 5 senses as we know them, then I think the chances are much better of becoming sensitive, not only to worlds in the metaphysical realm, but also to more sensitive to this physical reality as well. It's one of the things that we see when people go through our program. We spend some time outdoors and encourage people without the HemiSync to tune into the world around them. And what so many people find is that this world is actually speaking to us all the time if we have ears to hear and eyes to see, and if we take the time to notice, then it becomes magical.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, probably the best part about the whole thing is, you know, being able to just open yourself up to everything that's around you, all the frequencies, you know, just in the common day life. And, you know, even if you're just feeling better about yourself as the day goes on, you know, tuning in, like you said, tuning into these frequencies, it's amazing.
Right. That was the question I'd had, and it went right out of my mind, is after they've been through the program or used the home CDs, do you find that after a while they're able to achieve this level of consciousness without the help of the tools, that they're able to recognize it and bring themselves down into these states all by themselves?
That's our intent, because we don't want people to be dependent on the technology. We want people to be able to access these states at any point in their life. You know, if you're in a business meeting and you need some kind of guidance, you don't want to have to call the business meeting off and say, I got to go lay down for 45 minutes and I'll be back with you after that time. We want people to be able to just be able to pop into these different realms of experience so that they can make these connections. And of course, as you may understand, that it's only as effective as what people are willing to practice. You know, when they come to the Institute, they may have these skills while they're there and retain them for a period afterwards. But if they don't continue to use those tools, they can start to lose those abilities.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, why would you want to be able to just, you know, keep yourself at this level all the time, or when you need it to come down to that more relaxed, open state. But one thing, you mentioned briefly lucid dreaming, and I know that's something you work on a lot at the Institute, and we really haven't brought it up. I myself, I can only think of maybe a handful of times I could say I had what would qualify as a lucid dream. For those of you who are listening and aren't familiar with the terminology, a lucid dream is basically the short version of it is a dream that when you are conscious, you know that you're dreaming and you can actually control yourself and what you're doing in the dream and kind of do what you want with it. I could think of maybe a couple times where I think I had a lucid dream. I woke up feeling amazing. It was an amazing feeling waking up. Almost, I can't really even describe it. I can't really think of the question to kind of want. I mean, is that kind of how people you get there at the Institute? Is that kind of how they feel when you get them in and train them to have lucid dreams, or can you train them to call in lucid dreams at any point? I'm going to sleep tonight and I'm going to have that type of dream, and do they get that same kind of almost euphoric, just incredible, walking on air sensation afterwards?
We try not to put terminology to another person's experience. We try to remain very neutral and allow the person who's going through the experience to put the terminology to it, because everybody comes with their own belief system, their own theory of how the universe is put together, and there's a language that they use. So our job is to simply create the context for the experience to happen. The participant's job is to take the experience and put it into the language that's familiar to them. And so lucid dreaming, even though I used the term before, isn't something that we are specifically aiming at. But I could tell you that from my own personal experience, that I think the experiences that I've had fall more into that category of lucid dreaming than they do in the out-of-body experience. Another person could go through it and they would have more out-of-body experiences. Another person could come through and they might have more what they would call visionary experiences, or they might have creative experiences, or they might have encounters with deceased relatives, and on and on and on. There's just so much that is available to us. So the lucid dreaming, I think, is something that people can experience while they're there. But very often, that feeling that you were talking about, that sense of walking on air, that sense of well-being, almost euphoria, many of the people who come through the program, by whatever means they get there, seem to get, by the end of the week, they seem to move into that kind of space, and so much so that they seldom, if ever, want to go home, because it's so precious to them. And I can only imagine. Like I said, maybe 3-4 times in my lifetime I've lucid dreamed, or literally I controlled what was going on. It is a dream, so you can do whatever you want, and I woke up with it. I mean, I can just imagine doing it for a week or 2 weeks, however long the program runs. I wouldn't want to go home either. It'd be amazing. One of the things that happens over that period of time that's different from, say, using the CDs at home. When you're at home, if you're lucky, you might listen to a CD a day, but most people are going to find that it's going to be maybe a CD a week, or maybe one a month, and so they'll use it and then walk away from it, and they return to their original baseline. But at the Institute, because we're doing one exercise and then coming back to a grounding state, and then doing a second one and a third one, each time the exercises tend to build on each other, so that your baseline of awareness begins to shift pretty dramatically, although slowly over the week, sometimes imperceptibly. But it definitely starts to move, and it isn't until sometimes when people go back into the world that they begin to realize how far that they've come from where they were before they came to the Institute.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, my thought since the beginning was, if people in the investigative realm could go through this course and then learn how to take that home with them. So just before they start a ghost investigation or enter a alleged haunted house, they could bring themselves down into that state, and go into the house almost as a psychic would. If everyone on that team had that ability, instead of just the one or two psychics that would be there, how much more understanding and possibly how much more evidence they could capture if every investigator knew exactly where in the room to look or point that camera or put that voice recorder and things like along that line. And me personally, like I said, I'm interested in what happens after death, and just, I'm looking to talk to people that have already crossed over and can describe heaven to me, or what this next part of the journey is for this energy field called the soul, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it's just so many things about the Monroe Institute that just fascinated me that I just wanted to hop in a car and drive right down there.
well, we wouldn't turn your way. I can tell you that. We would welcome you with open arms. Seriously, if you, either one of you, would like to come down sometime for a tour, or we could even stick you in the booth maybe and give you a little taste of what it's all about, or if you wanted to come to a program, just to let us know. We'd love to have you.
Oh, I would love that. That definitely have to put that on my schedule as one of my vacation destinations.
All right.
I don't know what the rest of the family think of it, but I could go there for a week easy.
Well, if even if nothing else happens when you come to the Institute, imagine what your days looks like. You go to bed at night, you wake up, you have breakfast, and then you go back to bed again. And then you get up and talk to the group, and then you go back to bed again, and you spend a lot of time in bed. And if nothing else happens, it's great rest.
Well, the hard part would be keeping me awake.
That's right. Well, that's where the audio signals do kind of help you in that regard.
Yeah. Sure. I know one thing. I know we're getting close to the end of our 2 hours here. And one thing I kind of wanted to touch on quick, because me as the investigator type, I'm always kind of the research, evidence, scientific guy. I know the Monroe Institute has a research section. Mm-hmm. What are they currently doing in the research part of the Institute now?
Well, actually, as I mentioned to you before, that Skip Atwater was the research director for about 20 years with the Institute. He now has moved into being the president of the Institute, which has left a bit of a vacuum in terms of our research. We're in the process of looking for a new research director. In fact, I've got somebody I'm pretty interested in. But once we're going to have to get through this economic crisis right now before we can find the funding to make that happen. But as soon as we do, we're going to get our research up and going. But we have been doing, let me just say that in the past, our research has been around the technology of HemiSync, its uses, its effects, and different methodologies have been used. We've also used some of our programs are designed to be research programs where we gather information of people as they're going out into these various realms and coming back and reporting what they're experiencing. But we're also now we've moved into looking at what some of the long-term benefits of the Institute and its programs are for people, and so to some extent we're moving from a quantitative approach to research to a more qualitative approach. Because one of the difficulties that you run into with this is that you can map brain waves all day long, but that doesn't tell you what the experience of the person is. And so we want to get at that experience, and we want to gather as much information from that by gathering the stories of what people have to say. We're also engaging in the beginning of a relationship with the University of Virginia. They have what's called the Division of Perceptual Studies, which is an outgrowth of Ian Stevenson's work. Ian Stevenson did a lot of research around the issue of reincarnation, and collecting stories of children who remember previous lives and remember how they died, and that was the beginning of that division. But now they've moved into near-death experiences, extrasensory perception, PK types of phenomenon, and so we're very excited about working with them as we move forward in the future as well.
Does the Institute do anything with like past life regression and anything along those lines?
We have a program that we call Timeline, where that is the focus of that work, is to look at both past lives and future lives, and even simultaneous lives too. Right. And I'm going to run ourselves out of time here. This will be my last question, I guess. Because this is something I've heard a lot, and I've always had a remote interest in all this stuff. I know when you start talking about timelines, and you have your past lives, your current lives, and future lives, one of the theories adopted by certain faiths and different aspects of this is each life is meant to build on the past, and each life you have certain goals, and the main goal of all your lives is to reach, a pure, 100% pure life. Do you find that, or is that kind of a theory that you've seen adopted or used? Well, we, as I mentioned before, we try not to get into theories. We just want to create a context for people to do their own exploration, and then they can use those experiences and apply them or modify their theories as they see fit. And so, I think if you were to talk to everybody on staff, everybody would probably have a different perspective on that based on what their own thinking is. But the thing we don't want to do is to project that onto our participants. And so we work very hard with our facilitators to make sure that they retain a very neutral perspective in all of that. So I really think kind of the best way to really describe it would just be, to make the life you're living in now better and more enlightened and in tune with what's around you.
It's not a bad approach. We've got about 2 minutes left. About 2 minutes left, so I want to tell everyone that Paul's book, Spiritual Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, I know you can find it on Amazon. Is it in regular bookstores everywhere too, Paul? You can get it through Barnes & Noble, and if it's not in the bookstore at Barnes & Noble, ask them for it, and they'll get it for you. And and that's basically the journey from your childhood right up through to you having your experiences at the Monroe Institute, correct? That's right. But what I'm doing in the book is weaving together my own personal experiences, what you work at the Monroe Institute, but also trying to put that in a biblical basis so that people understand that there is some kind of a thread here that goes way back in time. Okay, and the website address for the Monroe Institute? It is Monroe, that's MONROE, Institute, that's all one word, so monroeinstitute.org. We're a nonprofit organization. Now, okay, if you're a nonprofit, I guess a question pops into my mind. Do you accept tax-deductible donations? We absolutely do. Absolutely. All right. And that's a good thing to know. All right, we got a little over a minute left. I want to tell everyone that in September sometime, when I can hook up with him, we're going to have John Corkum here, and I believe, Paul, you're probably familiar with him. I am. He's one of our facilitators at the Institute. Yep, and he's going to talk to us a little bit more about the ghost investigating uses of HemiSync, I think. And Josh, who did you say you had coming up next week? Oh, yes. Next week we will have the Reverend Wilson. He is a Native American and shaman, reverend, practitioner, Reiki master, clairvoyant, and I could go on for another 2 minutes about what he does, so I will just get it to you in words and put up on the webpage. Incredible guy, one of the best psychics I ever met. Very good. I want to thank Paul Rademacher, I think I got it right, for joining us. And I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties we had this week, but I'm so glad you stayed with us, and I hope to have you back on again.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, Al and Josh. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure's mine.
And everyone, join us back here next Sunday at 7 p.m. right here, Blog Talk Radio. Catch us at HauntedAmericaRadio.com. And once again, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Josh.
The big orange monster with not much hair and teeth on his lips. He just stands there. Out in the hall, putting on his shoes, I can tell that he's kind of scared too. The man with the bomb. He scares me more. The man with the stick. He's under the floor. The man is weak. Who's that at the door?